This lesson will introduce you to reconciliations for grade 11 accounting. Firstly, you need to understand the importance of internal cash control. Cash is probably the one asset that is most at risk because everybody wants cash and it's very easy to use and spend. It can also be very easy for people to access, and for that reason, you need to make sure that you have all sorts of controls in place to try and prevent the cash getting lost or stolen, and one of those ways is by doing a bank reconciliation. Obviously, the main purpose of the bank recon is not to identify fraud, because hopefully you don't have fraud. However, it is possible for something fishy to be going on, and then it's very important that you do pick it up. More importantly, a bank reconciliation will pick up transactions that you might not yet know about, and will also identify if you've perhaps made errors along the way that need to be fixed. It's very important that you have separation of duties in any business that has a couple of employees. This is for the reason that obviously if it's just you, the owner, and you are the only person, hopefully you trust yourself not to steal your own money. But as soon as you have other employees, you want to make sure that they don't that they are not tempted to steal at the same time. So what you'll do is you'll try to separate the duties so that each one acts as a check on the other. Be careful not to say you want to duplicate duties, because if you simply have one person redoing all the accounting records that the other one has done, that's actually just a total waste of time and money. Instead, what you do is you have one person, for example, recording the entries in the cash receipts journal, but a completely different person taking that money and physically depositing it at the bank. That means that the bank deposit slip will act as a check, and there's no way for one person to just take some of the money without you realizing. Now, this also brings me to the idea of your source documents, like the deposit slip when you physically deposit cash, etc. If you have source documents that can track the movements of all your assets and specifically your cash, that is going to help. Have you noticed sometimes when you go past a toll booth when you're traveling, or sometimes even at other little shops, there'll be a sign that says, please ask the cashier for a receipt? It's not for your sake they're doing this. It's because if the cashier is forced to give you a receipt, they are unable to pocket the money because now there is a record of the transaction that took place. This is one of the ways that you can have cash control. What can happen then is you can check your cash against the documents that you have and pick up if something is missing or something isn't quite right. To introduce the idea of a bank reconciliation, which is quite simply when you receive a statement from another party, in this case the bank, you want to compare it with your own accounting records to see that you have got the same transactions. In an ideal world, it should be exactly the same. However, in the real world, there are things like timing differences and errors and so on. So for this activity, you need to find a friend and you need a bag of Smarties and 2 little Ziploc bags, and I will guide you through it. Firstly, what I want you to do is to place some Smarties in each bag. Don't worry about counting them. Just randomly put some in one bag and some in another bag, and then seal the second one. Use the Ziploc to close it. Imagine that the first bag is Amy's bag and the second bag is Joe's bag. And Amy and Joe are siblings, brother and sister. If they look at their Smarties right now, do you think they'll be happy? Well, I don't know. Joe might complain that Amy's got more Smarties, and Amy might complain that Joe's got the pink one and she wants the pink one. So how can their mother solve this problem? Well, firstly, let's do a comparison of what each one has got. What I want you to do is, using your pencil, I want you to write down exactly what Smarties are in each of the bags in front of you. In my example, Amy has got 2 yellow Smarties, 3 red ones, 2 blue, 2 green, and 1 purple. Joe, on the other hand, has got 1 green, 2 orange, 1 pink, 2 blue, and 1 red. Immediately you can see Amy has got more Smarties, but they also have completely different colors, and this is very important. Once you've compared them, you can see that they don't have the same. How can you keep them happy? Well, if their mother had to say, that's okay, Amy's got 2 yellow, so let's just take one of the yellow ones from Amy and give it to Joe. I'm sure you can imagine Amy's going to be jumping up and down with fright, going, no, you can't take away my Smarties, you gave them to me. So the only way in which the mom can actually make Joe happy is by saying, okay, Amy, it's fine. I'm not going to touch your yellow Smarties, but maybe if I give Joe some yellow ones, then he'll be happy. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare all of these and see what is the same. And in actual fact, they've got very few that are similar. What we're going to do now is we're going to add Smarties to each bag to make the bags exactly the same. And I want you to write these in pen. Notice that you can add into Amy's bag. However, Joe's bag is sealed, so you can't. But that's okay. You can just put them in a pile over here for Joe. Joe won't mind. Firstly, you can see that Joe has got 1 green one. Amy has got 2 green ones. So Amy's happy. Amy doesn't care. But Joe has got 2 orange that Amy doesn't have. So we need to give Amy 2 orange Smarties to update her bag with what Joe's got. In addition, Joe has got 1 pink one. That was the one that Amy was getting particularly concerned about at the beginning. And so we'll add a pink one to Amy's bag. Now we can look at Joe, and how can we make Joe happy? Well, what we need to do is we're going to add them below. We're going to give Joe the 2 yellow ones that Amy has got and he doesn't. We're going to also give him the 2 red ones. Now he already has 1 red and Amy had 3, so we just need to add another 2 to make them the same. We can see that we also need to give 2 green Smarties to Joe because he doesn't have that. The blue I ignored because do you notice Amy had 2 blue, but Joe also had 2 blue. So that's fine. They're both happy with their blues. And then lastly, Amy has got a purple one that Joe doesn't have, so we need to give that to Joe. If you look at them now, can you see that each of them have actually got exactly the same Smarties? They've both got the same number, and they've even got the same colors. So what on earth was this? Well, what you've just done is a reconciliation. What happens is that you have got your cash journals over here. You receive the information from the bank statement and you update your cash journals with the orange and the pink that was on the bank statement and you didn't know about. So this could be, for example, be things like bank charges or maybe a deposit from a customer that you were unaware of because they forgot to send you a proof of payment. All of those things would be things that you are unaware of, but they did actually happen, and so you need to update your records. On the other hand, you can't actually just add to the bank statement. If you had to phone the bank and say, please won't you add these transactions, they're just going to laugh at you. Now, firstly, why on earth would you have some transactions that aren't shown on the bank statement? Well, maybe you set up a future dated payment that you recorded, but obviously it won't have come up yet because it's for tomorrow's date instead of today's. You might also have a situation where customers paid you and they sent you proof of payment, so you think you've received the money. However, are you aware that if the customer works at a different bank or has a bank account at a different bank, what it means is it'll take a few days for that money to clear between their bank and your bank. So if you, for example, are with Standard Bank and they are with First National Bank, what will happen is they will send you a proof of payment, you will record it, but it hasn't yet shown on the bank statement because it hasn't yet arrived in your Standard Bank bank account. So those are examples of things that might be on in your records, but not on the bank statement. Now, you can't go and just phone the bank and say, please add this deposit and, please make a note of that payment that's going to happen tomorrow. They would just laugh in your face. So instead, what you do is you create a bank reconciliation. This bank reconciliation, in reality, is kind of like an extension of the bank statement. It's the extra things after what the bank has already got that you would expect to see later on when you look at the next bank statement. So, when you are busy recording your transactions for bank, just keep in mind You're going to compare your bank account against the statement, just like we compared the Smarties. This is called a bank reconciliation. The term reconciliation simply means to make something agree. If you have a fight with your sibling, I'm sure mom or dad will come in and they will try to get you to reconcile. They will try to get you to agree and make up and make friends again. That's exactly what we are doing between the bank account and the bank statement. Keep in mind, though, that from your perspective, your money in the bank account is an asset. However, from the bank's perspective, the money that they owe you is a liability. And so for that reason, you are actually going to notice that your bank account will show debits for all the deposits going into the account and credit for the payments going out. If you look at the bank statement, it will be the other way round. In reality, these days, most bank statements actually just talk about deposits and payments so that people who don't understand debits and credits don't get confused. But if you do have headings of debits and credits, just keep in mind that is why they are going to be different to you. Bank reconciliation. This process is done regularly. It should be done at least every month, but some businesses might choose to do it more often, for example, every week. The purpose of the bank reconciliation is firstly to record any transactions that we don't know about. These are the things we might have picked up on the bank statement, like bank charges or a deposit by a customer. And also we'll use it to pick up if we've happened to have made any mistakes, or possibly, hopefully not, but possibly if any fraud has taken place. You're much more likely to find it if you do a bank reconciliation regularly. A bank reconciliation statement is that little piece that is going to be the extension of the bank statement and reflects all the entries in the journals but not yet cleared by the bank. What you will do is next month or next week when you get the bank statement, you would then compare it to your bank recon to see whether or not those transactions have actually cleared as you expected. So this is the process that you will use. On the left, your business journals are represented by Amy's packet of Smarties in the activity that we just did. The bank statement is Joe's closed, sealed packet of Smarties. The first thing you'll do is compare both to see what transactions appear. In our situation, Amy and Joe both had 2 blue Smarties, so obviously nothing needs to happen there, and you just tick them off to show that they are the same and you are happy with that. Then what you'll do is you'll pick up the things on the bank statement that your business does not yet know about or have not yet been recorded. In this case, these were the orange and pink Smarties that Joe had and Amy didn't. We simply added them to Amy's bag. Then we looked at Amy's Smarties to see what Joe didn't yet know about. And you can see over here, these were all the ones that we had to add to Joe's. But because we can't physically change the bank statement, instead, we create our own bank reconciliation statement that simply acts as an extension showing what we expect to see the bank doing in the next few days. So let's have a look at this example. The bank statement shows a debit balance of 2350. Remember that a debit balance in the bank statement means that actually you owe the bank. So actually it would be an overdraft or an unfavorable amount. If you are doing a bank reconciliation statement with debits and credits instead of just pluses and minuses, you might like to make a note here that a debit actually means a minus and a credit is a deposit, just to make it easier for you to remember. Remember also that the bank recon is simply an extension of the bank statement, which is why we're going to stick to the wording that the bank statement uses. So we can show that debit balance as per bank statement over here like that. Then we might have a cash deposit that hasn't yet been reflected on the bank statement, because if you take a whole pile of cash to the bank and deposit it, they need to count it and check it and clear it first to make sure that everything's fine. So that might take a little bit of time to clear, and you would show here that there's an outstanding deposit. On the other hand, as I mentioned before, it could also be a proof of payment from a customer who banks with a different bank that it's taking a bit of time to clear. You might have an EFT payment that is future dated and therefore it hasn't yet shown on the bank statement. Technically, the transaction hasn't actually happened yet, but you might have just recorded it now so that you don't forget to record it later. And then you would want to show that this is a payment that the bank won't yet know about, and so we just show it, showing that we will wait for the bank to be able to clear that at a later stage when the date comes. And then the bank account shows, in the general ledger, shows a credit balance of 2020. So we'll put that as the beginning amount over here for our bank account. And then we will also need to add in our bank account the transactions that we were unaware of, like in this case, the bank charges of 50. That will then give us our new bank balance. Now, why on earth am I showing this amount at my credit balance as per my point of view, whereas the rest of it I did at the bank's point of view? Quite simply, if you have a look at these transactions of what you expect the bank to do, the net effect of those three entries would be a debit of 2070. If you then put in your credit, it means that both sides will actually be equal. And that is how you check that everything is as it should be. If you were simply using a one-column bank recon with pluses and minuses, then the 2070 would quite simply just be the answer at the end, where you say minus 2350 plus 1480 minus 1200 equals minus 2070. And you wouldn't need to do these totals. It would just be that that is the end result, and you would check that it's the same as your bank account. Well, hopefully that makes you understand the idea of bank reconciliations a little bit more easily. In the next lesson, we'll look at how on earth we deal with future dated payments, like this one over here that we mentioned, and also corrections of errors.